parents is probably 100%. The really hard thing is when you realize that they just might not know how to show it. That's hard for us to get our heads around, but the same is true about us too. How many of you know how to show your love towards your parents? How many of you are comfortable enough to do it? How many of you would just go, they know? You know, maybe. Yeah, maybe. I hope so. Wouldn't it be great if they knew and heard it? That would be dope. You know? And if you don't think so, wait till you're a parent. Then go back and watch this video again after that. And so you find ways to be around the things that you love, even if it's someone who you pretend to hate. Now, that doesn't mean that you only have yourself around that person. In other words, sometimes people will get this idea in their head, like they want to be like I've heard, for example, people say, well, I want to be a priority in this person's life. And by priority, what they mean is the only thing. Now, you can be a priority, you can be like an important thing in someone's life, but not be the only thing in their life. And so it's worth considering that as well, that there are various levels of dedication. And yet some people will have a person who is their entire life, is their entire world. I see people like this. Is it a good or bad thing? I don't know. I guess it depends on the people who are involved in it. It's kind of like if you keep finding yourself around somebody who you pretend to hate, or you say, who you hate, we'll just put in quotation, we'll scratch the air for it. If it's someone that you say that you hate, I guess it's worth asking yourself, why is it that you keep doing that? And why is it that you're making that person kind of the center of your world in that way? There are lots of other places where you could put your time and energy. And certainly if you're in a room with a person, you're kind of forced to be there. Then like in a classroom, for example, well, it doesn't mean you have to look at them. Yeah, so then if that's the case, then maybe the dedication is the action of love. The action of love. Now, just because you love something doesn't mean that you're going to take steps and you're going to act on it. Like we've said, you could be afraid to tell the person, but what's this other part where he's talking about then? That where there's love, you can even live without happiness. How could you be in love? Or how could you have love and not have happiness? Yeah. So I put longing and wanting in there. By that I mean kind of what you're talking about there, where maybe you really want to give things to your kids. And it isn't just like things, I have a friend of mine whose daughter is going to college next year. She's going to go up to UC Santa Barbara. And she's struggling because her daughter is 18 and she's never had a job before. By the time I was 18, I had 4 or 5 jobs already, by the time I was 18. I started working when I was 12. And my friend had something similar where she had already had a job by the time that she was 18. Now, her daughter is coming up, of course, much better than she did in terms of having stuff, living in a much nicer area than my friend grew up in. And she's struggling because her daughter has an opportunity. She could work over the summer, get a temporary job, do the 9-to-5 thing and work. Or she could go to school early, and they have like a summer bridge program where she can take 2 classes, kind of get used to. I'm trying to think of what the word is. The word to be slowly acclimated into, so she could kind of slowly transition into college life. So it isn't just going to go from high school into here's your college courses, because especially at a UC, again, it's UC Santa Barbara, especially at a UC, the quarters are only 10 weeks. And you know the differences between a Cal State and a UC system school? Cal State is a semester, so I think it's like 16 weeks. So it's 10 weeks at a UC versus 16 weeks at a CSU. In the 10-week classes I took at UCLA, it wasn't uncommon at all for the professors to just come in and talk for 2 hours. That's kind of what they do. And then they would assign the readings. And your job was to read before you came to class so that you'd know what he was talking about. Because he wouldn't say, here's what the text says. He would talk about some of the nuances of the text. And if you didn't read the stuff, you wouldn't know what they were talking about. And then it wasn't uncommon at all for us to get to week 6 of the 10-week quarter and the professor to walk in and say, we're in the 6th week. We haven't had any tests yet. We should take a midterm, so that way I can give you a grade. So when I see next time you guys come in here on Thursday, I guess there'll be a midterm. It's going to be an essay. I'm just going to ask you a question. You'll answer it in an essay. That'll be your midterm. And then at the end of the quarter, you'd have another essay, and that would be your whole grade. Just 2 essays, 2 in-class essays. That wasn't uncommon at all. Or they would just say, "Oh, I need to give you a test for this class so that you can get a grade for it." And then they would just, write up a test, or they'd have somebody else, one of their teacher's assistants, write the tests. So my point is that, imagine going from here every day, 7 hours a day, whatever it is, sitting at a desk, having everything kind of given to you, to all of a sudden now walking into a classroom where the professor doesn't know your name, doesn't take attendance, and just talks for a few hours a day. And if you show up, you show up. If you don't, you don't. And you're assigned the readings. They don't check to see if you've done them. You just find out when the tests come. Think about going from this to that kind of freedom. You can imagine what happens to a lot of freshmen. They end up on academic probation. They get kicked out because it's very difficult to transition that for yourself. So anyway, she has the opportunity to go to the summer bridge program. It's 2 courses. It's 6 weeks. But the professors are aware that these are incoming freshmen. So they're encouraging, they're motivating, they're helping them figure out how to do all this stuff, so that way there's a slow transition in. Okay? So now my friend is stuck because she's trying to figure out which would be better. Should she get a job and learn about what it is like to work? Because if she doesn't, she's probably not going to get one until after she graduates from college. And so that would put her at 23 years old, 24 years old, and then getting her first job. I have a good friend of mine who's getting his PhD in cognitive science. I think I've mentioned him to you before. He does artificial intelligence research. He's trying to figure out how to get artificial intelligence to perceive the environment around us. It's complicated, but it's interesting. Well, interesting to me anyway. Trust me on that. So anyway, he is 35, I think he is now, 34, 35, and he's never had a job before. He went to college, and his parents, his dad's in the Navy, and has taken care of him his whole life. And so here he is now trying to finish a PhD, and he has the first job he ever gets might be like some kind of a teaching job, like a researcher's job. That's it. And that's a very difficult thing now because you don't know how to work. You don't know how to live in that kind of environment. And so my friend anyway is stuck because she's trying to figure out, do I have her go get a job so she can learn a few things about the real world so she can get some level of experience? And maybe that might motivate her to get a job when she goes off to Santa Barbara, because then she'll want to, she'll want to fill her time with more stuff and earn some money in the process and all that. Or just send her off to the summer bridge program and pay for it, and then she'll be transitioned. Which would be better for school? Probably the summer bridge, because you transition in. Which would be better for life? I don't know. And I genuinely mean that. I don't know. Which would be the easier way to go? Here's the hard answer. Still, I don't know. You might think, well, the summer bridge thing is going to be the easy thing. Maybe for the summer, but it won't be the easy thing in life, maybe. Because if you never get that work experience, that might make it more difficult for you to get a job in the future. One of the things that we have not discovered, we kind of already knew this, but people don't pay attention. When I got my first job, the minimum wage was $4.25. What's the minimum wage now? It's like $16, yeah. And by the way, I'm not talking like, back in my day it was, no, it wasn't super long ago, man. When you look at inflation, it's nowhere near still, man. I mean, if it's incredible what the minimum wage is right now in terms of how high it is, even when you look at inflation. So now the question becomes, what effect has that had? The effect it's had is that it'll be very difficult for a lot of you guys to get jobs if you want to get a job next year, because the employers don't want to pay $16 an hour to teenagers. They can pay $16 an hour to adults, and they don't have the limitations. They can have them work whenever they want, as long as they want. For when they hire you guys on work permits, there are all kinds of rules they have to follow. So you have to follow all those rules and pay $16 an hour? There's no way. So a lot of my students who are seniors, they've never had jobs before. And I remember when I was growing up, and all my friends, I mean, pretty much all of us had jobs at some point, in some capacity. And so then by the time you graduate, from high school and you get a job, then you go to college also, you work and go, by the time you graduate from college, you've had a few jobs in your life. It gives you an opportunity for experience. So again, it goes back to that question, which is is it easier to go to Summer Bridge rather than, My point of all of this is that if she didn't love her daughter, right? If she didn't love her daughter, and by the way, she listens to these videos, so I can say, I know she listens to these videos when she's going to when she's going to school, when she's on her way to school, she gets dropped off. She listens to these videos, so I know what you're thinking. My mom doesn't love me. Yeah, we all say that, right? Of course, your mom loves you, which is why she has this dilemma. The question is, which one will be better for you? Because you want to do the best thing. Man, it's not so hard because when you have the ability to do the easier thing for them as well. Because we all want our kids to have a better life than we had. And sometimes that might mean like having opportunities that we didn't have. Like doing all the sports and activities that they weren't able to do. Or going to a summer bridge program that she wasn't able to do. So love it isn't even just an action. It's an action that we hope is the best expression of love. If that makes sense. Because, think about how you express love. And is it the same way that everybody expresses love? It's just like if you make somebody a priority in your life versus making them the focus of your life. Two very different ways of approaching it. Just because you don't make a person the focus of your life doesn't mean that you don't love them. In fact, if you make a person the focus of your life, there's a good chance that down the road you're going to like them less. Or you're going to be with them just because you don't know any other way. Because, in other words, you're going to miss out on a lot of opportunities. And it's difficult to look back over a life of missed opportunities and say, I did all this because I want to only focus on you. And now there would be some resentment that will build up, even if you don't mean for it to. Even if it wasn't them asking you to do it, even if it wasn't their fault, as we might say, you can still build up that resentment. Think about how many of you get resentful or angry with your parents because they don't let you do things that you want to do. So imagine how much more then when you're an adult. So, yeah, there's a possibility there. I wonder how many of us love our parents as much as they love us. Or if there's a deficit there. I wonder how many of you have ever loved somebody. Oh, by the way, just because you might love your parents less, quote unquote, let's just say you do, does that impact how much they love you? I wonder if they sit there and go like, you know what, you only love me, 82 units of love, so therefore I'm only going to love you 82 units of love. No, they don't, there's no math for that. For parents, it's probably 100%. The really hard thing is when you realize that they just might not know how to show it. And that's hard for us to get our heads around, but the same is true about us too. How many of you know how to show your love towards your parents? How many of you are comfortable enough to do it? Or how many of you would just go, they know? Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I hope so. Wouldn't it be great if they knew and heard it? That would be dope. And if you don't think so, wait till you're a parent. Then go back and watch this video again after that. I'll let you know if she goes to Summer Bridge or not. So sometimes the love will be only one way. In other words, you can still love a person who doesn't love you back. You can still love a thing that doesn't love you back. Any of you guys need to love cars? Cars don't love you back, man, let me tell you. There'll be things that don't love you back, but that's okay. Because you're not loving the person, you're not loving the thing, hopefully not because you can get something back for them. Hopefully you're loving the thing or the person because of something inside of you that just has that expression. Because if you allow their lack of reciprocity to affect how you feel about them, then that means they have more control over your emotions than you do. So let me say that again. If you allow a lack of reciprocity to affect how much you love that person or how you care about them, then you're allowing them to have more control over your emotions than you do. Well, I'm only going to love you as much as you love me. Well, then you don't really, then it's not really you who's deciding that, is it? It's them. So You gotta be careful how much control you give other people in terms of your life. It's like people who, I'm sure some of you have to be this person, because I hear about this person all the time, that you'll do something just to prove people wrong. Like you're so stubborn, that if they tell you like, oh, you couldn't, I don't know, whatever, go to college. I'm gonna go to college just to prove them wrong, or I'm gonna do this one thing just to prove them all wrong. Well, then once again, you're letting other people have more control over your life than you're willing to take for yourself. Maybe it's a motivation to do something that maybe you should, whatever that means, do, or maybe it's just because you're letting other people have control over your life because you're so stubborn. Interestingly enough, that's the paradox of it, that we're so stubborn because we don't like other people telling us what we are and are not, that we'll go ahead and do what they want us to do just to prove them wrong. So maybe if the person doesn't love you back, maybe there's a deep sorrow. Have any of you ever loved someone who didn't love you back? No? Some of you are sitting there going like, nah. Not yet. Maybe not. But life can be sweet even in the sorrow. In other words, the fact that you love somebody or something is really important, by the way. Especially if you're in sorrow. Especially if you've been jaded. Especially if you've been hurt. If you can still love somebody or something despite all that sorrow and sadness, and there's another word for it, melancholy. My favorite word in the whole wide world, melancholy. If you can love despite your melancholy, if you can fall in love with people and ideas and thoughts and things and just existence in the universe generally itself, well then there's something probably special about you. Because that means that you're somebody who's entirely in control of your emotions. We're not really in control of them so much, maybe, as possessed by them and possessing them. And so, maybe love isn't about possessing another person. Maybe it's about possessing yourself through the love that you have for another person. Maybe. Any questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques?